Yep, and I think our other team member also just joined, Robbie Saklaridis. And actually, when Robbie can be added as a panelist, she'll be kicking us off. If she's ready to go, actually, maybe not drop it on her. She's just joined.
Gotcha. Okay. And good evening, everybody. It is Thursday, September 15th. This is the ANC 5D's September public meeting for their Zoning and Development Committee. We've got just like 4 items on the agenda this evening. We are going to hear from the development team behind a zoning case. It's a 15-24, it's a second stage PUD for a project proposed for the Union Market area. And there's a whole team of them are here this evening and going to give us a presentation on this. They had actually presented at the Tuesday ANC public meeting, but I think the ANC had asked them also to present to us, and that way this actually honestly gives you more time than you had there, and you can take the full hour if you want, but I don't think you need that. But you can tell us about your project, and then that video will be reviewed by the ANC commissioners. Will often look at that afterwards. After they go, we're going to chat a little about zoning commission case 22-21, which is a planned PUD for M Street Northeast near the Arboretum's entrance. We're also going to talk about, there's a BZA case 20766 that is for an accessory garage proposed for house zoned RF1 on West Virginia Ave. And there was also a pending zoning commission case planned also for Union Market at the Motel 6 site. So we might discuss that as well a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Lawrence Ferris of the development team for ZC 15-24.
And actually, it'd be Robbie kicking us off.
Hi guys, thanks so much for having us tonight. I'm Robbie Saklaridis. I'm a VP in the development group with JBG Smith. I'm representing the Gallaudet University JBG Smith development team partnership tonight, where the topic is Parcel 4. I will briefly give you an overview of the project because it has been going on since 2015. So you've probably seen me over the years and some of my colleagues. The larger project is known as the 6th Street development. And it's comprised of 4 parcels of land owned by Gallaudet University, all of which went through stage 1 PUD a few years back that was approved with the ANC's full support and OP's support. So we've got the community benefits set, the use, the density, all of that meaty stuff of entitlements and rezoning pretty much set. And the first phase, parcels 2 and 3, are actually set to break ground in about a year. We received our final zoning approvals in January, again with your support, so much appreciated, and we're excited to finally get the project moving. That first phase is multifamily and retail mixed use with some university space. Sorry, one step back. The 4 parcels flank 6th Street, hence the name 6th Street Development, in Union Market. So between Florida Avenue and Penn Street, they're on either side of 6th Street. And we'll show you some maps actually, that'd be good to go ahead and bring up a map while I'm chatting, Oliver, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
So let's see.
Can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Great.
So that's the 4 parcels. And this is from our stage 1 approval. That's parcel 3, yep. So we'll do from the bottom is parcel 1 in purple. That'll be a university building, and the stage 2 is forthcoming on that. Parcels 2 and 3 are that cluster of predominantly yellow there, just to the north, and that is what I was saying. Just received our final stage 2 approval earlier this year. we hope to break ground next year on that. And what we're here tonight to talk about is Parcel 4, which is our second phase of development, multifamily over retail mixed use building.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The Parcel 1 that's between 5th and 6th, that is the current Union Market parking lot, isn't it?
That's right. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to match it up with what's there presently.
Yes, no, that's a good call. And we've blocked in where you see like the dotted lines, that's future development above Union Market. They have an approved PUD to put that there. So it is a little disorienting from today's conditions. So that's a
And
good
this,
call out.
the one just to the north of that, but between there and your building, that's the one that's under construction now.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then there's Brentwood Hamilton Park across the street there. Yeah. So, so we're back with our this is a stage 2 PUD for that Parcel 4, which is up at the top of the hill on Penn Street. That is, I know you guys are all well aware of the zoning process, but the stage 2 focuses predominantly, almost exclusively on design and anything else that they ask us to resolve from the stage 1. We're not making any modifications to density, height, or any of the flexibility requested. So it is pretty straightforward design focused tonight. And we have our architects and landscape designers here to walk you through that. Please do interrupt with any questions as we go. Okay, so we filed the PUD, the stage 2, we filed in July. And we're waiting to get assigned a set down date, likely end of October, which would maybe set us up for a hearing in December, January. So that's sort of where we are in the process, not too far along. So with that, and we presented to the ANC, I should say, back in June to mostly positive comments, and then again on Tuesday. So with that, I will turn it over to Nick, my colleague, to talk a little bit more about Parcel 4 specifically before we give it over to the architect.
Robbie, before you jump into design, I did a question. I was looking at the exhibits, exhibit from case record, exhibit 3G1A, and it showed a table. It was like approved first stage PUD, and it said what it was, and then there's another table that says Parcel 4 proposed. And it looked like things had changed. Is that what, like, is this purely design changes, or is it those? It looks like there's some things have changed. Like it looks like approved first HPD was like an 82% lot occupancy, and now it's like a 90%.
That's right. So there are a few things, and it's mostly design related. So the PUD we had flexibility with lot occupancy. That wasn't a strict stick to. But you'll see from this, it's mostly design refinement and trying to, as we got into it, looking at this massing and create very dark and dense units and an experience for the residents. So you'll see instead of 2 bars or a square, we now have an eye, but it's still roughly the same amount of density and the same height. So the changes in that, and maybe we can bring that up at the end and talk more to it in detail. We don't have it as part of this, but I think we have it on hand. But really, it's just the result of going from a concept like this to a schematic design and refining what can actually work and what looks and feels best on the site.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, Nick, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Robbie. So hi, everyone. Nice to see you all this evening. My name is Nick Anderson, and I'm one of the development managers with JBG Smith. So Robbie just walked us through the stage 1 PUD massings up here, and tonight we're focusing on stage 2, so I'll design. But before we hand it off to the architects for the design portion, I wanted to briefly remind everyone of the community benefits, so we can move on to the next slide, please. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly remind everyone of all the community benefits and amenities package that was approved as part of our stage 1 PUD with full OP and ANC support. It's a pretty long list, so we'll just stick to the highlights. First and foremost, in terms of neighborhood development, the uses and benefits that we're proposing for our project are all net new to the site and neighborhood. We'll be providing approximately 60 units of affordable housing as part of the project. and the majority of those units are all at the 50% MFI level. We have executed a first source agreement with DOES, which will prioritize hiring local DC residents as part of the construction process. We have about 10,000 square feet of retail dedicated to the makerspace at a discount market rent. And additionally, we'll have 5,000 square feet of retail dedicated to deaf or hard of hearing entrepreneurs. Now, one of the really big goals of the project is to enhance the pedestrian safety along 6th Street. And we will do this by narrowing the right-of-way to slow traffic, installing a protected bike lane, and installing a tabletop crossing at Neal. Additionally, we'll provide about 65,000 square feet of open space, which will greatly improve the 6th Street experience. And in conjunction with DDOT, we're going to help with traffic mitigation by installing new signaling and new traffic cameras. And both of our open space and streetscape improvements recently obtained second stage PUD approvals and set to start construction in the new year. And then finally, as it relates to sustainability, our project will be LEED certified. You can go to the next slide, please. So again, tonight we're just focusing on parcel 4 up on Penn in between 5th and 6th. And here are just a few images of the site today, where you can see it as Gallaudet's Corporation Yard, which is mainly used right now for construction material staging and parking for the parcel next door. So we're really excited to present the design of parcel 4 with you all this evening and serve as a welcoming entry into the neighborhood. And with that, I will hand it off to Oliver.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having us as part of this presentation of this meeting. We're excited to present our design for parcel 4. I'm from Seldorf Architects. I have my colleague here, Michi, as well, who will chime in when she needs to correct me. And I also have David. David is here, who will also speak to the landscape component of the project. So let me get started. Both Robbie and Nick had already spoken to the site context or where we are located. I think the unique attributes of our site are related to the context. We are bordered on the along one side, we have at 5th Street along the historic wholesale retail spine. And then on the opposite side on 6th Street, we have the sort of campus of Gallaudet University and the Brentwood Hamilton Park, two very different sides of our site. And then we're located at the top of the hill of the Union Market District here along Penn Street. The site, due to its location, has a large 15-foot plus change in elevation from Penn Street down south to the bottom of our site. So we'll show you how we've taken advantage of that in section. Continue. So looking at some of our original massing ideas for the site, and how we actually refined the massing from what you saw earlier from the stage 1 PUD. We orientated the bulk of our massing in an east-west axis along the site, sort of working with the topography of the site and also having the majority of units also face south and optimizing for energy performance. What that sort of introduced is this space between these two massings that you can see where we've actually opened up the building on 5th Street, introducing an open entry plaza, which is the entrance to the building, but also a flow open from 5th Street with the retail wrapping into that courtyard and essentially extending that retail experience along 5th Street. And then as we move further east through the lobby and the sunken garden in the building, we also have a green roof on the 2nd floor on overlooking 6th Street and making that sort of connection between the green terraced amenity and the sort of green and lushness of Brentwood Hamilton Park along 6th Street. And then here, this last diagram, to complete the massing of the building, we introduced these sort of infill components here shown in gray, and we're sort of differentiating them here on this diagram because they do, I will talk a little bit later on, they do represent a unique material articulation that breaks down the building and helps us really look at the building different types of material and reduce the scale of the building on what is quite a large site. And I think I wanted to just point out here also with this massing diagram here on the far right. So from that sort of maybe donut plan that we had, massing that we had in at stage one, we essentially removed one of the bars, have a central bar, and we've sort of expanded these courts and open areas on the west and east to allow more daylight to get deep into the building and to the units as well. So here, this is a section through 5th Street on the west. And as I explained earlier, that sort of green open entry plaza that then takes us through underneath this bridge building, as we call it, where the lobby is, the sunken garden up onto the 2nd floor roof terrace, and then down to 6th Street to beyond to Brentwood Hamilton Park. So with that 15-foot plus level change from the north down to the south end of our site, we essentially have 2 ground floors. This is the lower ground floor, and you can see here how we start to articulate this main entry plaza along 5th Street, opening up the building to retail to the north and retail to the south. The retail wraps into the court, and there are also retail terraces that will be associated to those retail spaces for potential food and beverage tenants. The parking entrance is towards the south here on 5th Street. And just to reiterate, the lobbies in the center leads through to the sunken garden. And then on 6th Street, we have more retail along 6th Street. We also have a secondary entrance for the building, and that sort of connects actually to the bike lanes. This is sort of thought as an entrance from 6th Street as well, but also an entrance for the leading to the bike storage rooms. The loading off-street loading is also on this side of the building here to the south.
A brief interjection.
Yes.
Just to get back to the change in lot occupancy, the courtyard was not included in our stage 1. So that's just an example of some of the design refinement that we think benefits both the building and the public experience, that is just a result of a refinement over time. So the lot occupancy reduced with the introduction of the courtyard. Keep going.
Yep. Then on the upper ground floor, we can see here on Penn Street, we have varied sizes of retail all along Penn Street. And to sort of further articulate the breaks in the building and the materiality that I'll talk about in a minute, we do have these insets in plan which extend the sidewalk and again also create retail sort of adjacent outdoor spaces that can be used by retailers. And we have that along Penn Street and also here along 6th Street. So here we're sort of, I would say, hovering a little bit above across the street from us on 5th Street, looking at the building directly. You can see here the entry plaza that I pointed out, the retail along 5th Street here. We are introducing glazed and steel canopies, much inspired by the canopies across the street, that will run along 5th Street and wrap into the entry plaza. You can see here the lobby in the distance. And I think this view essentially really sums up the sort of massing, but also the articulation of materiality of the building to break down the massing. The building is made up of brick buildings with punched windows on essentially the corners of the site, and then connected with these more transparent glass and steel balconied facades. And I want to point out that this is not a sort of curtain glazed, simple, straightforward glass facade. This is a layered layered facade that will start with very thin steel round columns that hold up the balconies. There will be railings and then a setback for the balconies of about 4 to 5 feet. And then behind that, there'll be windows and doors for each of the apartment units. And you can see that here with this bridge building that sort of bridges over the lobby and the sunken court on the other side. And also on the right-hand side, this infill building that sits over the parking entry here on the right-hand side. So we've included a few precedent images of Seldorf Architects' work, particularly that we've done that use masonry and demonstrate how we work with these materials and working with punched openings. We have here a variety of buildings, some with limestone cladding or brick buildings, as well as concrete buildings. And I think what we want to demonstrate here is really the articulation of the sort of 4 corners of the building that will be made of brick. We think using the brick is contextual here with what we see in this sort of post-industrial neighborhood and also on the campus. We think it's a material we like using and we've used, as you can see here, in other projects. And the texture and the longevity of the material is what we like, and just also like that it's contextual here. The punched openings in our building will be finely detailed with metal surrounds and metal sills, and the windows will be set back. So there is relief in the sort of shadow. It'll show shadow in the sort of brick facade. And we're in schematic design now, so we still have some time to develop those details, but we spend a lot of time developing the details around the windows, the way the brick is laid, the selection of the brick, how the brick terminates at the retail level and how it terminates at the top of the building. And I think this building here on the right demonstrates that pretty well here in the Chelsea neighborhood of New York. And here at the top, the same building close up with the windows and the sort of storefront and canopy articulation. I think these buildings have a strong urban identity while still letting the pedestrian experience be, opened up by this at the street level. We've included here this building in the middle. It's a stainless steel building, but it essentially shows our precedent inspiration of how we want to articulate the bridge buildings in the middle and the infill buildings that have this very skinny verticality of the columns, and then the horizontality of the slab and the railings and the setback windows with the balconies in front. Here more buildings, in particular brick buildings in brick that we've used in a sort of contemporary way, and how we've articulated the openings around with the metal trim. We're very interested in using the brick in a unique pattern, and those are things that we're still exploring. We are excited to use a sort of tan colored brick. Maybe stay away from a red brick, but actually do something unique here with this tan colored brick and juxtaposing it with the darker metal window surrounds, window frames, and window sill details that I mentioned earlier. And here a sort of close-up of that balcony facade that we propose for the bridge and infill buildings. We have a few more views here. We're moving around the building. 5th Street is on the right and Penn Street is on the left. So I think this view shows at least 3 of our brick corners anchoring the building at the corners, and then having the balconied apartments in between here, and then the retail below, but also retail along here on all fronts. And then here you can sort of peek into that entry plaza that will extend from 5th Street. Sort of close up of the retail bays and the canopies wrapping into the entry plaza. And then here we're sort of hovering over the Brentwood Hamilton Park, looking back at our site on along 6th Street. You see the sort of opposite end of that bridge building looking here towards us. And the sunken garden set back in here, and the second floor roof garden articulated along here above retail. And then also we have retail bays on the north and the south, and here's the entrance to the loading. There's also a dog park actually along the south here that we've included on the second floor. I'll hand it over to David to talk more about the landscape component.
Before you jump, I have a couple questions just about the building. What is the height from the finished floor to the ceilings on the 10 residential floors?
You mean a typical floor to floor?
Not floor to floor. If you're in, if I'm living in these apartments, take out a measuring tape. What's the height of the ceiling from the floor?
Okay, Michi, do you know that offhand?
Hi, well, our floor to floor is 10 feet. The slabs are around 8 inches. That is subject to change as we develop everything. So it's around 9'2".
Okay. And what is the, I was looking at the plan, I see, so you planned, I forget the total number of units, but I know there's 370 studios, 193 one bedrooms, and 84 two bedrooms. Do you have a table somewhere that just lists, like, I mean, are these like micro studios? Are these like, what's the average square footage of these studios? And,
Sorry to interrupt really quickly. One of the ASL interpreters needs to be let up as a presenter.
Perfect. I mean,
yeah, they have to go on and off, right?
Yes, I'll promote the panelist, and
Okay,
I will
thanks so much.
highlight her. Thank you for giving me the
Sorry.
heads up on that.
Continue.
No, I appreciate it. And I think I need to, where's the ASL interpreter? There she is, and I'm going to spotlight her. Okay, so you're both spotlighted.
I have this is Skip Keats. I have a question.
Well, Skip, I just want to wait for an answer for the first questions. Do you guys know the average square footage of the units?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I thought I was lost track. I thought that had been answered. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, does JBG or Michi, do you have that handy? I don't know if we have a chart handy, but I don't know if we have the information.
I can pull it up quickly.
You want me to stop sharing, or do you want to just read it out?
Verbally do it.
Thank you.
The focus of the current planning is on the exterior of the building, and obviously we've done the unit layouts and targeting kind of the mix that is required for JBG, the developer, and in balance with providing the IZ units. So subject to change, I suppose. But right now we are tracking an average unit size of 700 square feet. And we have a mix of everywhere between studios, 1 bedrooms, junior bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms.
And 2 bedrooms, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I remember at the start of the presentation, you referred to it as a multifamily, and I was like, oh, are there 3 bedrooms in here? And then I looked at the plans. I found a table somewhere that listed 2. So are there 3 bedroom units, or is it just 2?
Yes.
There are 3 bedroom units.
There are
yes.
3 bedroom units.
There are. There was some, I forget where it was. Oh, maybe, you know what? It was just on the IZ. There was an IZ planning slide in Exhibit 33G1B, and I thought it was giving me the total number of units in the entire building, but it looks like that was just which of them are IZ. It would be handy, because I know the ANC commissioner is going to ask this, like, what's the total number? If you could have a slide for like the next ANC public meeting where just quickly summarizes, this is the total number of of units in total. And these are the number of studios and 1 bedrooms and 2 bed. Just so people can understand how much more development this is, how many more units we're adding to the city.
Sure.
That's about 650 total. Is that where we are now, Michi?
I think we're at 647.
But
Yeah.
we'll get that slide to you for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kevin, may I ask my question now?
sure, go ahead, Skip, thanks.
I'm just trying to visualize this in my mind, so please bear with me a moment. The way I'm seeing this with the picture of what looked like in Penn Street, basically, you have a long rectangle that's the glass. And then the masonry pieces, there are 4 of them and they attach to it. Is that correct?
Yes, I essentially at the corners, we have these 70 or 74 foot wide brick buildings. And I mean, I'm just saying it the reverse, the way you said it. And then these glass terraced apartments fill in between those brick buildings.
Okay, so if you took out the masonry ones, it'd be a big glass building.
Sure.
It'd be
Okay.
a small glass building, but yeah.
Pardon?
a much smaller glass.
Right. No, I'm just trying to visualize it. So basically the center is glass.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yes.
the way I was understanding it. I just wanted to make certain that the way I was seeing it was correct.
Yes.
Because some of the views make the masonry look like it goes all the way across.
So the masonry is on the corners here, and to your point, maybe you're referring to this view. The masonry does wrap in all the way a little deeper when you go into this court here,
Okay.
and then the glass shows up again in the back, and that's the opposite side of the glass that you see from 5th Street.
Okay.
Does that help? Yeah.
Yeah, and that, in a sense that would extend to the either side.
And then this extends and you see it coming through on Penn. And then on this side, we have that other glass infill building that you see
okay.
over here.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that wraps around.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Shall we continue?
Jump into the landscape? Or were there other questions?
Should we continue with the landscape portion, or do you have any other questions?
I have one more question.
Of course.
The depth of the balconies. So I know there's a new 3-story condo building next to mine, and the balconies, the kind of fire escape, kind of balcony / fire escape, egress at the back of the building. It's not that deep, so maybe 4 feet. And I often, I often wish that they had something deeper so they could use that as more living space. Because I've got a nice guy at the back of my house, I have a 10-foot deep porch. We hang out there all the time. It's nice. Is there like a zoning or a technical restriction that prevents you from making those balconies like slightly deeper, like 6 foot, or like is there? I know you're going for a cleaner look, and maybe you don't want them extending too far out. But are there zoning or technical restrictions from having those balconies deeper?
I cannot, and actually, JBG has spent a lot of time overanalyzing, you might say, balconies ever since the pandemic hit and the emphasis that everyone places on outdoor space. So we've developed our own guidelines too to ensure that the space is usable. We even place furniture there to make sure that it's usable. So it's a function of both the depth and the width. And I think that's what's so great about these balconies. They undulate. I don't know, Miki, the exact depth, but it's top of mind for us to make them actually usable, furnishable, livable. Absolutely. But I don't know, Michi, if you could provide the.
Yeah, of course. So you can kind of see in this image here, and maybe I can even annotate. You see how it's deeper and more shallow. I'm pointing over here. So they do undulate between a 6 foot and a 4 foot balcony. Part of the reason we do that is, one, it's sort of hard to see in this image, but you can see shallow and deep. Part of the reason we did that was when looking at the design of the building and thinking about the quality of the space within the building for tenants, and making sure we got enough light into the floor plan, because the deeper if you have a 10-foot patio, it's pretty deep, dark below that. The other thing I will note is that when you have a balcony of a certain size or kind of framed within exterior walls within a certain dimension, by zoning, you have to start including it as gross floor area. So in order to make sure we achieve the best balconies we could, we are including them as gross floor area on the project, whereas typically you don't have to count them.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the context about how if you made them really deep, all you're doing then is killing the light for the units below. So yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, I appreciate
Right,
that.
unless it becomes a terrace building, but if it's cantilevering over 10 feet, will really darken the living rooms below or bedrooms below, right? Yep.
I have a question real quick.
Yep.
The units with the balconies, so everyone won't have a balcony. It is just those that are set in with the glass. Are those the only units with the balconies?
That's correct. Yes.
And I know we had a discussion about this before, as far as the size of the units. Are the IZ units and the other unit, I guess market rate, if that's what you want to call them, are they all the same? Is there any difference in the size of those units compared to the regular units?
Yeah, so by IZ, they'll have a similar distribution in terms of size and balconies as well. And in addition to balconies, there's quite a few terrace units. You can actually see some here on the second floor terrace and at the penthouse. So I think we're somewhere like, I don't want to misquote, but very high relative to most of our other developments in terms of private outdoor space for tenants. That will be, the IZ units will reflect that same ratio of market rate, both size and outdoor access.
Okay.
Commissioner Rhodes, I will say I was actually happy to see one of the case exhibits. They actually give a map of the entire building, indicating where every single IZ unit is located. So I'll actually applaud them for doing that, because often we're asked just to accept a number without knowing, all right, are you just shoving all the IZ units into the basement? And they're actually showing, and I do appreciate that they're showing that, like on a floor by floor where the IZ units will be located. Now, a question for the development team is that does that then become fixed? Like, after assuming your second stage PUD is approved, can you then afterwards change where those go?
Technically, yes, because we have flexibility to move around partitions as design continues. However, the reviewer still will hold us to the what I was saying, having the same ratio as the market rate units in terms of size, mix, outdoor access. The interiors will be indistinguishable between the two types of units. We still have to pass all those check marks to get through the IZ program and be permitted.
Gotcha.
And just to chime in, even though you can adjust the exact locations of the units during permitting, under an IZ, you can't put them wherever you want. You can't kind of cram them all into one corner. They have to be evenly distributed across the building. And so the zoning reviewer does look at that very closely. And yeah, you can't kind of stick them all in one spot.
Great.
Not that we would do that anyways.
I hope not.
You're protected.
Well, thanks for that clarification.
Sure. Okay, David, we'll let you take landscape. This is actually really great. I love the landscape of this project and how it's developed. So.
Thanks, Robbie. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and to share this work with you all. Future Green has been a part of the Union Market and 6th Street plan back since 2015. And it's been nice to see the different parcels through this process, and really excited to be here to share parcel 4. As you can see from this overall roof plan, there's just a really wealth of green spaces throughout the project. And I think we're trying to offer up kind of a multiplicity of types of spaces, both private and communal, to really add to the urban lifestyle. Wrapping around the building at the ground level, there's a number of occupiable zones along 6th Street, Penn Street, and even at 5th Street, we have over a 30-foot wide sidewalk, and a lot of large flex zones that will help kind of guide people into the entry plaza, which we can look up at more in an upcoming slide. On the 2nd floor terrace, there is a pet park. And we think that that is a great amenity to add back to the neighborhood. It's really generously sized, and will offer a planting buffer to some of the units as well, which should help baffle some of the noise we might expect to find there. And the Courtyard Garden at the 2nd floor terrace is also really a showpiece. There's both the lower garden that's visible from the lobby, which is kind of like almost like a terrarium or jewel box kind of design. It's occupiable, and really a kind of a lush landscape that's largely a visible garden from the interior. As you get up to the 2nd floor terrace, we've got private terraces abutting all of the edges, and then a large communal amenity terrace with lush garden rooms that are visible from the street below. So as Oliver showed that previous rendering, you'll really be able to kind of get the visual glimpses of green from the ground below. Well, Skip, I saw you had your hand
Yes, I have
raised.
a quick question.
Do you want to jump in, please?
Yep. From that sunken garden up to the 2nd floor terrace, is that a ramp that goes up to it?
It's a staircase. But there is accessible. Both spaces are ADA accessible.
But can you go from one to the other if you're in a wheelchair?
From one to the other, no, it was not planned to do that.
You can
Directly.
get there via elevator. There's an elevator right to the side, but no.
Right,
But not from garden to garden.
Yeah, it would be too steep.
Okay. I'm just thinking that it might be nice if you have the space, even if it wraps a little bit, to do a ramp. The reason being, if someone's in a wheelchair or they're having just general trouble walking with a cane or walker or something, and they're talking to someone, they'd be able to go from one garden to the other. And accidents happen. So you might have people in crutches or something, having to go back over to a lift and then come back to their friends is somewhat, and I'm just throwing that out there as something to consider.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I'm afraid it might become largely ramp in that whole space, but it's certainly something we could look at and see if it's feasible.
What I was thinking is it looks like you had that sort of like trapezoidal thing in the lower part. If you wrapped it around there, so coming down around this little thing here and just had a gradual ramp with exits off, you would probably have enough space to wrap it up and up to it. Do you get what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I would have to study it to see if it's feasible. To be honest, Skip, I mean, I love your intention, but it seems like it would be a real challenge to accomplish a ramp, but certainly something we could look at. Yeah.
I'm conscious to that. What I do for a living is accessibility related stuff.
Absolutely.
So I'm just throwing that out there as something to look into.
Absolutely.
That's I think it would be a nice thing for the people who are using the space, or you have people with baby strollers.
Sure.
David and Skip, as somebody who has a new addition to my life, and I'm constantly, is that Skip speaking? I'm sorry. It was.
Go ahead. I'm done.
It was, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't see who was speaking on the screen, so I wanted to make sure I was addressing you correctly. But the floor to floor height change there is almost 20 feet. So it is a significant amount of ramp that would be required. What isn't shown in the landscape plan are sort of the intermediary plans and the proximity of how close the elevators are, which are sort of right here. And then we have entrances and exits right onto the terraces there. Not to say that David's team isn't very creative in the way that they can address landscape and possibly introduce it. And we should definitely look at it, but I wanted to put that 20-foot, 19-foot figure it out to you.
Okay.
Because I think you'll understand what that means.
Oh, yes. I no longer am in one, but for almost 3 years, I was in wheelchair after an accident about 20 years ago. So I'm hypersensitive to that stuff.
Of course.
So on these plazas, so this is Marshall speaking. The entry plaza is clearly open to the public as part of the retail experience. Are the second floor terraces open to the public, or is that a tenant amenity sort of area?
These are planned to be tenant amenity areas.
The interior ones.
The interior ones, yep. And I will get to the entry plaza. We could actually jump there now. I would just also note on that roof plan, I'm sorry, Oliver, just that there is a penthouse garden as well. So you can see that that's the largest of the private amenity spaces, with lounges and dining areas and grills and pools and all that kind of stuff. It's quite a substantial space. And then you see the way that the gardens kind of wrap around the building and provide, a more private terrace spaces as well. If we could jump to the next slide. I mean, I'll just jump over these and we can jump into the plaza and maybe address your comment, but we are looking at scalar studies. And well, I guess we can go back there. I think
Sorry, which slide? I'm confused now. Which slide
I'm
you
sorry,
want?
Oliver, could you go back to, I'll speak to
This
these
one?
briefly.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
But I will address the comment about the entry plaza and access. So I just wanted to say with this that we, roughly we've got 6,600 square feet of that entry plaza. And it's a really nice volume of space. We started to look around at other similarly sized courtyards, really historic spaces, like Paley Park in the lower left-hand corner in Manhattan, classic urban space. There's many takeaways, I think, from each of these, but just, knowing that it is a really kind of generally size space, even with the retail kind of abutting some of the edges, with which to create meaningful public space. So we're kind of using many of these projects as kind of inspirations. Obviously our concept for this project is different, but many kind of great takeaways here. And with the next slide, Oliver, we've been working on this project for over 7 years, and back in 2015 we distilled the Gallaudet Def Design Guidelines into a series of kind of working guidelines for ourselves as we approach the public space. And so these are still very present in our mind as we're considering the public realm. As we jump to the next slide, in the entry plaza, you see, again, that 6,600 square foot plaza space. It is wrapped by retail at the south and the north. And as Oliver noted, there is a really substantial grade change from north to south as well. It's a very steep slope. So one way we were able to create accessibility throughout was to create this kind of landform which occupies that kind of upper left-hand corner. And it really becomes a way that you can traverse down more informally, but opens up the larger, a really substantial amount of the plaza to being all accessible and open to the lobby. So we have these really strong interior-exterior relationships, but it provides different moments for people to sit throughout the plaza, different types of bench seating, some closer to the entry, but also some really notched into the streetscape, which we think will, again, kind of activate the Fifth Street streetscape. It's 31 feet overall, so it's quite substantial and offers up a lot of opportunity to really inhabit it, I think, in fun ways. I think that's largely what we wanted to note there. This is the kind of view from Fifth Street looking in, the retail terrace, retail kind of bump out on the right. And then you can see on the left are kind of landforms beginning to kind of feather in to what we see is really like a natural stone material that terraces down and creates a kind of distinctive feature. We're anticipating using elements like multi-stem trees to create kind of visual interest. These are obviously 4 seasonal landscapes that will look to weave in like an orchestration of plants throughout the year and build in evergreen structure. So, it really feels and lush throughout the year. Look forward to your thoughts and feedback.
One. Yep. Just making sure I wasn't muted. One. Oh well. Couple thoughts. With the landform and the landscaping, which I do appreciate, just a thought to keep in mind: there is a skate park there currently, and you will probably be fighting that, or it doesn't seem like you're embracing it. So, just so you know.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a state goal that was actually moved a year ago. So maybe the time will help us out there. That's a really good point, though. I totally forgot about that link.
And some material selection we could be smart about, you know.
Because my other question is, the site generally is a little remote from the rest of the Union Market, and so I was kind of looking at trying to figure out how you're activating it and making it, because it'll kind of need to be a destination to really get the bang out of the retail. And so thoughts on that, as well as I guess year-round use. Have you thought about winter usage? I mean, it seems like a great summer space, but the massing of the buildings does block the southern sun. So in the winter, it will be a fairly shaded, probably cold area. And thoughts toward I think we all learned to love our heating lamps in the past 2 years. So just thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think you know, what's not shown in here is that the two retail terraces are kind of at different levels, you know, and the one on the north is much higher, which I think is kind of cool and quite interesting. And I think the solar aspect that gets is better in the winter as well. So, you know, I think that is something to consider. I agree. I think there needs to be, you know, some activation to kind of draw people up here. But I think a meaningful public space in this neighborhood might be the thing to do it. You know, it's really something that's lacking. People are, I think, pining for a little bit more of that lush green. You know, it's such a concrete heavy neighborhood that I hope that is something that kind of brings them here. And obviously the retail is a driver as well.
I think just to add, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, just to
say,
go ahead.
just real quick. I was going to say, yeah, the right type of retail teamed up with this space could be part of that.
Yeah, and I think just to point out, this was something that came up in the meeting the other day. You know, we did a bunch of sun studies, and yes, we looked at the sun, summer, winter, and that's one of the sort of details we're looking at with the canopies and using glass or something translucent. So you do get, you know, even if you're under the canopy, you will still, when the sun does come around, you'll get light through there, and it's not overshaded by the canopies. I think the other thing, since we are at the top of the hill, many of the sites below us have sort of pedestrian thoroughfares to the other side of between 5th and 6th Street. And I think what's nice about this sort of larger 6,000 square foot open space is that it could in its own right become a destination, obviously drawn by the retail, but at being at the top of the hill, I think it gives back to 5th Street and expands the sort of pedestrian experience on 5th Street without necessarily having to go through, which you can do on many of the sites below, or you can cross through Penn Street as well, obviously.
I would just add one thing to that, Oliver, is that a reference point for both Saldorf and Future Green is our other project at 14th and R, the Liz, which has got bump outs where parking spaces have previously been, and I think created meaningful public space there as well. So even in those kind of little slivers of 9 or 10 feet, you know, you're able to kind of really pack in things that really activate the street, and I think hopefully make people want to be there.
And you will be hearing, it seems like it's sort of solo up the hill today, but there's the property just across the street on Penn is currently delivering, and I think you're hearing later tonight from a developer across the street. So it seems like sort of the energy will not shift, but extend up the hill, and it's really in between from Morse all the way to Penn, and it'll feel more of a holistic, vibrant neighborhood as the small area plan sort of flushes out over time.
This is on the Fifth Street side, so it is sort of addressing, or not address, it's in conversation with, I guess, the existing old warehouse or wholesale sort of storefronts, correct?
That's right. Yes.
What I'm curious to know is, does anyone know what will be on the north side of Penn? Because that would affect the retail that's in the upper corner there.
Right, so we don't know. I mean, currently that's where like the Angelica pop-up is.
Exactly.
That strip.
That's more on 4th Street, actually, I think, isn't it?
There with the
No.
In the
Dolce.
Dolcezza.
It's on
Yeah.
Penn.
Chase, I think that's up
Yeah.
on that part of Penn between
Right.
5th and 6th now.
And Angelica's
right.
right next to it, yeah.
Right,
And then Songbird is now up
Are you-
there.
Talking
and
about this.
Songbird, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Dolce, Songbird is up there, and then the movie. I
The
just lost the
Angelica.
name.
Yeah,
Right.
Angelica, I think, is up running off the top corner of that. There's a hotel up there now too, Selena.
That's not on this block, I don't think. The
Anyway, let's not get bogged down on where
Right.
Angelica is
Yeah.
located.
Edens, you can ask Edens, they own all of this and they're presenting later tonight, so you can ask them all about the context. of what
Okay.
they're planning to do there.
I
We'd
was
love
just
to
thinking
know
that
too.
I was just thinking that what would activate the northern part of your complex would be essentially what's across the street in both directions from it.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately it'll be double-sided retail there.
Okay.
And that's the vision for Penn Street, I think, from everyone that owns property.
Thank you.
there. Yeah, yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned bike racks. Are those the bike share racks or bike racks for the residents for their personal bikes?
There
These
are.
the-
So go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, for the residents, but we're delivering a capital bike share station as part of our other parcel, as parcel 2. That's
Mhm.
just to the south. So there will be a capital bike share station as part of the project, but just more central.
So, say for instance, if they have a personal bike and they don't want to park it outdoors, is there any way that they can store them inside, like any racks that will be inside the?
Yes. For personal bikes, yes. So on
Yes.
this 6th Street entrance here, the secondary entrance I'm
Mhm.
pointing out, alongside the bike lanes that will be introduced on 6th Street, there was an entrance here, and then you can go down to the floor below, and there's a large bike room there with racks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
As part of the project just due south, where you are putting in the capital bike share, how many bikes? Like, I know they kind of come in modular chunks.
Yeah,
many bikes?
it's the modular chunk that DDOT
Mhm.
has. I don't know if this is the one night we told Girls Play they didn't have to join us, and we got a question that they could answer. I don't know, David, if you recall how many bikes are on that.
I wish I did.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, Robbie, I
I know,
don't.
that's-
Yeah.
We can get back to you. We'll get back to you on that
Okay, thank you.
answer.
I guess one
Yes.
thought,
Yeah.
one question I had was, so, I mean, there's a lot of really tall buildings now in the Union Market area. And they're, but a lot of them do different tricks where they kind of like, they undulate, or, I think my one concern about it is when if there was a bird's eye view of a person who is, let's say, standing on Penn looking up, it is a very kind of imposing structure. But I guess that's the design. That's the the concept of it. But was there anything you guys had considered to make it, I don't know, more complicated? I guess I just worry it's just a
To
very
make it smaller.
Yeah, no, I hear.
I maybe not to make it smaller, but maybe to make it look smaller. Like, I mean, I know on H Street, there's been several large buildings where they actually changed the they kind of made them look like it wasn't just one large massive building. And I know you've kind of done that already by breaking up the building into like glass sections and concrete sections.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
We might all want to say the same thing, but we also I was going to say the setback of the glass building being, 6 feet back, also sets back the penthouse, and it sort of creates a slight cascade there. And I hope I'm saying that right. For me, you guys can probably talk more.
You mean at the penthouse where it tears and sets back? Yes.
Yeah,
right.
It's
The building.
The penthouse does that, but the glass portion is also set back, like along Penn, for example.
Yes.
I think that helps. Not only is it a material change, but it's further set back from the street. That section is.
Right. So those set ins in the plan that I pointed out, where you have more retail sidewalk space, there the building sets in, and so we took a lot of effort in trying to break up the massing as much as possible. We looked at having this building be rotated 90 degrees, but essentially along 5th and 6th Street, what we're left with now are actually very short brick elevations right on the street. They're not very wide elevations. Had we, put the building this way and that way, we'd have sort of made very long elevations. So we intentionally gave 5th and 6th Street these narrow elevations with the open spaces in between that will be very green and lush. And then on Penn Street, we have the longer elevation, but again, it's interrupted by having the setback, not only physical setback first at the street level, but then the further setback of the balconies above, and then the different material articulation, as you pointed out.
I think it's really successful on that Penn Street rendering that you have. It shows that. And I almost wish you did a similar thing where you do turn in and it does become mostly brick on the Paris Park side. So the 6th Street Park side, there's a nice purity, and it goes real well with the punched windows, the purity of that brick form you're creating, this minimalist design punched windows that on that Penn and 5th Street corner creates a nice square extrusion essentially out of that brick.
Right.
And you start to do it on the Penn and 6th Street side, but then on the inside, you kind of lose that nice purity. I imagine it'll mess with all your unit layouts and all of that, but the idea of that glass coming down that side would be really nice as well, to finish that square on that corner, because it does do a nice job, certainly on the Penn Street side, of breaking down what is a very large mass, a block long.
Right.
Could the person with the slides go back to those renderings? I think it was
sure.
So we understand, so I can understand, Marsha. Yes, these ones here.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll just see how I interpret, but I think on this side, as you said, these are square in plan, actually, right? These are almost 74 by 74, something like that. And then you have the glass. And then when you move around the building, as you pointed out, you see the square here and here. I think where you're saying then we continue the brick in is here. So the brick goes in further than it does on the outside. I would say one of the reasons, and you can see from our precedent images, that we like to keep things as uncomplicated as possible so that the materiality, the proportions, and the detailing shine through. And you'll notice that just inherent in our designs, we use very few angles and curves, although we're starting to explore them. But I think here, even with this view, I completely agree that the sort of logic of the corners would imply that the glass comes forward here, right, in the plan. And I think that would, in a way, I think, create a very nice partie, a footprint. But I'm concerned that when you sort of look in, that the building gets a little overcomplicated with the glass wrapping and then coming out towards you. So again, that was sort of a sort of decision that we had made, that we let the brick in this case come all the way in, extend beyond that 74 foot dimension that is on the opposite sides and just hit the glass bridge in a sort of quiet way.
You can see that period, and I think the fifth side looks really nice. I wouldn't go so far to say I'm concerned, and especially depending on what 6th Street becomes with some of the plans, that's becoming more and more pedestrian and less vehicular anyway. But as you walk north on 6th Street, you really will get a sense that they're two longer masses of a building that are next to longer masses of a building. So I'm not necessarily saying it's, doesn't match the context, but
right.
Yeah.
I do want to point out on Penn Street, as this image, sorry, let me get the right image, as this image shows, the glass facade that interrupts the brick does, as you said, continue all the way and then identify the brick corner. This exact same thing happens on the south side of the building, which unfortunately is hard to see. When you look in here, that glass facade does come all the way forward, matches the Penn Street side, and you'll have that glass corner there. So when you come up here, you'll see the brick stop and then the glass start. Does that make sense? So this side of the building is very much like the Penn Street side. It's only here that the brick does extend in and make the brick building a little bit longer.
There's something that's how it interacts with the bridge, if you will, this way. But it does look, you just lose the purity of your party, your original. Well, I don't know if it's your original party, but what shows up on the other corners.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we'll follow up with that chart, the slide on the units and the capital bike share count from our other parcel. Is there any other further info you'd like as we continue through the process? We'll certainly go back to the larger ANC and keep you guys apprised as we progress through.
Yeah, it would be handy to know, for instance, I know you earlier you said the average square footage is 700 square feet. If you could give, create a table for the ANC so they understand, all right, the average square footage of the 3 bedrooms is this, the 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom is junior one, down to however many different types of units you have, just kind of give, an estimate. What do you think the average square footage, so that people understand what's going in there. That would be helpful. I'm trying to think what other questions we had. And I know Commissioner Moore had mentioned that I know you guys are giving, I think 9% of the total units are IZ. And I know that's.
Yes, it's a 10% total of units are IZ, but the majority of them are at the 50% MFI level. So that's the most deeply affordable in the program now. So that's 7, bear with me on the percentages here. 7% are offered at 50% MFI, 3% are offered at 80% MFI. So sort of like a combo there to get to a deeper level of affordability.
Robbie,
Yeah.
Robbie, when we met, what was the original amount of IZ units that you had presented? Was it originally 10%?
Yep, that's right. So that because it was all part of our stage 1 PUD, that's been consistent for some time.
Gotcha.
Quick question. You may be planning on mentioning it later. How much parking is in this building? And how is it divided? Is it all for the residents, or is it a mix of resident and public for the people going to, say, the restaurants or something like that, if there are restaurants in there? I'm assuming that you're planning on having at least one based on the outdoor seating.
Would love to have a restaurant, at least one, yes. There's 2 floors of parking, and it is divided amongst retail. There will be some public parking as well as private residential parking. The exact breakdown, I do not know off the top of my head. Michi or Nick, does anyone have those numbers?
45 parking spaces, I think.
60 were retail when I was looking through your documents before, something
Yeah.
like that.
The reason I'm asking is because I live over in another part of the neighborhood, but parking is getting scarcer and scarcer for
Mhm.
residents.
Yeah,
And certain parts of the ward, or even 5D itself, they're not that close to Metro. Now, granted, Metro is not too far from where this is going in, but for someone who has a mobility issue, 4 blocks away is a long distance. So they're
Yeah.
most likely to have an automobile.
yeah,
That's why I'm asking.
yeah, absolutely. And not to mention the hill, just getting down to the metro from here.
Yeah.
Is a big step. Yeah. We're very sensitive to parking. Actually, a lot of the other new developments are already on wait lists for parking. And it's unclear whether that's a temporary COVID pop given the last couple of years or not. So we are, based on what other developers have experienced, hypersensitive to that and making sure our residents have enough parking within the building. I think we also agree as part of our plan not to give our residents on-street parking passes for the ward. So they won't be
Okay.
taking other community members on-street parking.
And then I'm just going to throw this out because you said it's 700 square feet average. What I have heard from talking to my friends is a lot of the apartments that used to work really well for people, 600, 700 square feet, they're now working from home all the time. So it's gotten a little small.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there as feedback I know I've heard from people. And I know you said it's your average. I'm just curious how much is actually bigger and how much is smaller from that. Is it people working from home?
Yeah.
Over time, it's going to lead to larger units. Does it make sense?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And that's another thing that we are studying internally. We have a whole task force over the last 2 years sort of look into this. And there's a few things we're doing. One is this very large blue amenity that you see on the ground floor is actually a co-working space.
Okay.
Yeah, for our residents. So that helps with some of that alleviation.
Yes, it would. Okay.
And then also part of the design of where units allow, we've put in like little nooks where folks could bring their own desk. We've also really focused on the design of the island. So you'll notice if you go and tour, a lot of the apartments come with like movable islands. So we've focused, and we haven't gotten there and it's not part of this PUD, but just so you know, sort of like how we're thinking about it, because it's a very well taken point and you hit the nail on the head. But some of the islands we've inserted little spaces.
When you say island, I assume you're meaning like a kitchen island.
A kitchen island, yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Yeah, a kitchen island is built to accommodate someone pulling up, plugging in, so to have like an outlet and a space, like space for your knees where you can pull in a chair and sit and work at your kitchen island too, if you don't have room or want to bring your own desk. So there's things like that we're considering in addition to unit size as well.
Okay, because that's been one of my concerns with a lot of the stuff that's going up. A lot of the sizing in my mind is still pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, because of course it was planned before the pandemic.
Right.
But the realities have changed a little bit. So thank you.
I have one more question. Would you have any electric car charging units in the parking area? And are the parking spaces, are they first come, first serve? Would it be some isolated for retail or no? It's
Yes.
first come, first serve.
We will have electric vehicle stations. And actually the count is in our stage 1 PD. This is another question for growth slate that they will know. And that's also like being baked into DC code now too, to have stations and also have further spaces be EV ready. So as demand increases, we can add stations without a bunch of infrastructure changes. So that answer is yes, and there'll be some for residents and some for retail.
Okay, that was my next question. Thanks.
So we're it's getting a little late here. I want to be a little respectful of people's
Sure.
time. And I know we had other items on the agenda, but you guys were the only presentation tonight. So
Okay.
I don't want to keep you guys any later. This has been actually very, very helpful. And I appreciate your time explaining the design to us in the community. And I know some of the other ANC commissioners will end up probably rewatching this video off the YouTube link, because you guys definitely got into some more detail on the design and the amenities in this versus a Tuesday meeting. So we really do appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
If anything else comes up, reach out. I think you have Lawrence's contacts, and Lawrence, you can provide them with Nick and I and the wider team. We're happy to answer questions as they come up and provide any more follow-up info. Okay,
Thanks so much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
So, Marshall, the other items on the agenda, and Skip, the other items on the agenda, we don't have to, I don't think we have, we're already running late here. We need to check the, what is it, ZC 22-21, that's the M Street Plan PUD up on Maryland Ave near the Arboretum. They have a
Right,
hearing
that's the
sch-
elder care place, right?
Yes.
Or not elder
That-
care, but the over 55 or whatever.
So
Yeah.
they have a hearing scheduled for December 22nd. So, you know, I guess we need to see how can we help, you know, I know Commissioner Moore submitted a report on that with some concerns. I know, Skip, you had raised some really good concerns at one of the recent meetings where you were like, hey, they're building right up to the lot line and they're effectively removing what used to be a public path. So
Yeah,
they're, you know, I don't think they've addressed any of those designs. They're just plowing forward.
and honestly, that public path, it would certainly be long enough for them to make it the entire thing just a ramp, which would be
So-
good for their own people too.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be concerns with that project. Right now, they're going full steam ahead. Office of Planning submitted a report stating that the double negative, they were not opposed to the project. So it wasn't exactly a
Endorsement.
a strong endorsement, but they were not opposed. They're probably going to try to see, but I think the ANC probably has, you know, has some work to do before that December meeting. Because if, you know, the ANC is quiet about it, what proposals is what's going to get built. I know Commissioner Moore has already submitted something, but, you know, I think Commissioner Moore's will be on maternity leave sometime, not too far in the distant future. So you guys, the ANC may need to schedule a vote in the, you know, October time, actually maybe next month, because some people may argue that a vote in November is a lame duck vote because it's a whole new crop of ANC commissioners coming in next year. So
Yeah,
what else? There was also a BZA case, minor one, 20766. That was for a project at an accessory garage with a rooftop deck.
that's the one we reviewed a month, just before summer, wasn't it?
Yeah,
2 months ago, yeah.
in June, and the DDOT or OP, DDOT rarely objects to it. They were like, it's fine, but OP put a pretty harsh statement like it was not okay. You know,
OP
they
is
did
what?
not-
The acronyms I'm not fully accustomed to yet.
Office of Planning.
Office of Planning, thank you.
Yeah, so they submitted a report opposing it. I have reached out to the applicant's representative a few times to see if they wanted to come and speak to the zoning committee or the ANC. And I've just gotten responses, oh, we're still reconsidering our options type answers, is how they responded. So
Yeah. Planning,
What was
say
the
why.
objection of the Office of Planning?
let me look for it.
Sorry, I think I may have interrupted Marshall. That wasn't my intention.
She was asking the same question, so.
Oh, okay.
bring it up here. That's D dots. See if I can share my screen.
Well, I hope everyone had a nice summer, by the way.
Thanks, Skip. All right, you see my, this is the report from their case record.
Denial.
Yeah. So they have an existing 70% lot occupancy, and they were asking for 74%. And they also recommended denial for pervious surface. I mean, they were basically, if there's not that much of a front, let me share my whole screen if I can do this.
Basically, the way I'm reading that, their objection is because too much of the surface is going to be covered.
Yes, I mean, and that's actually what they were proposing. They were proposing, see if I can, how can I share my entire screen here?
And considering the amount of flooding that's been happening in the city, that's a very valid concern.
Yeah, and once they build a garage in the back of the house, there's nothing stopping them from eventually putting another story. I mean, they're basically trying to occupy a huge portion. It's very much out of character, you know, and
yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, the way I looked at it was almost the entire lot would be taken up by structures of one form or another, porches and whatnot.
Yeah, it was basically row house and then a back
deck, I think it was.
Which almost immediately attaches to the garage. There wasn't much not covered.
Which means there'd be no absorption, there'd be no way for water to get to ground.
I thought it was it a full garage? I thought when we looked at it, it was more open than that, but maybe I
think it was a
misremembered,
two-car
or maybe it
garage.
changed.
At least the original plan was essentially a two-car garage. There was a utility pole that was in the way that would have to be removed.
Well, maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Here are the plans. So
Yeah.
if I can find,
Yeah, I was.
let me see if I can
I don't think I saw this one. I was thinking of a different one.
See if I can find the survey of the whole. That's what I should show is the whole house, the survey plat.
Yeah, they're going to put a deck, and then there's your second story you were just talking about. No, I guess that's the current house, actually.
See if I can show the whole survey plat. That's the handy thing right there. Okay. So this is the survey of the proposed. So you've got, you know, there's a lot line, front porch here. This is West Virginia Ave. There's the written house. They would have a wooden deck. And then there was a two-car garage right here. So there was going to be a pretty small area.
Which looks like it's paved too, I might add.
Yeah, I assume they would have pervious pavement
Brick or something, but yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
then
Even if that's all pervious paving, it's not even close to what, you know, what OP is looking for.
No, it's not.
And Kevin's right. Just the way they present the way thing was presented, I could easily see the deck that's above the garage becoming a guest house or something, with the deck above that eventually.
Eventually, yeah. So anyway, they have a BZA hearing that's been postponed till 12/14. So I think the ANC needs to most likely vote on a motion next month. So that's submitted to the case record. So they have on the record, because that's right now the ANC has not submitted, has not voted. You know, they haven't taken a stand on the issue. You know, generally speaking, if OP doesn't like it, it's not going to fly, but it would still be appropriate for the ANC to weigh in. So, you know, Commissioner Rhodes. Well, by the way, Skip, we do want to wrap up a little bit because actually we don't want to keep the ASL interpreters longer than they've been scheduled here.
Yes, Kevin, what you was asking?
I was going to, Commissioner Rose, if you could just coordinate with Commissioner Moore that maybe put that case on for a voting motion next month, you know, as is. Maybe they'll withdraw the case entirely before now, but I think it would be just good to, you know, and I'll leave it up to you to decide. You know, I think that the case record is there.
Okay.
But Skip, that's I think I don't want to keep people here later than we.
All I was going to ask is that particular lot, that area there, how much flooding does it get?
I don't know. So,
Most of the area is sort of higher. I guess it's at the bottom of the hill in Trinidad because it's on West Virginia, but I don't think. But I think most of that area is still pretty elevated. So I don't know that it floods
Okay.
much, but the runoff from that is the issue more. Runoff,
Yeah.
you know, it will continue down the hill and it floods at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Skip and Marshall, I really appreciate your support tonight. The meetings, you guys raised some really good questions for developer who came before us. So and I'll try to send my notes, write up my notes to the ANC commissioners. I'll just do a reply all on the earlier emails. So unless you guys have any objections, I'm going to wrap up the meeting for tonight. So anyway, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for attending the meetings. I hope you find this useful, and I'll see you all next month. Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.